Next up, we are going to shift gears once again to talk about a topic that is near and dear to all of us, which is our own health, our own lifespan, our own healthy lifespan. And so there are a number of investment opportunities available in the longevity space, and we are pleased to bring to you a panel of experts that will share with you where they see the investment domains. Today's panel is going to be moderated by Judith Mueller, the founder of Biohacking Eve, and she will introduce the fellow panelists. So let's give it up for her and the team.
Could I ask everyone to stand up briefly? You've seen this before. Shake out a little bit. Get the blood flow moving. A bit more, come on, energy. Yes, well done, thank you. And now I'd like you to look to your neighbor on your left and your right, and you will understand why in 17.3 minutes. All right, you may sit down again, thank you. So, welcome to the longevity panel. As you can imagine, this is a vast emerging area, and while today we only have 20 minutes, and they actually forgot to start the clock, thank you very much, we're literally only gonna scratch the surface. So I would like to give you a glimpse of really how broad this topic is that actually affects every single human being on the planet. Now, very briefly, for those who have not yet come across the term, the idea of longevity is not just about living longer, it is about living healthier for longer. So it is not lifespan, it is health span, or joy span, as I like to call it. So, a bit about myself, I'm Judith Mueller. I'm a serial founder by background, so I started my first company back at Oxford University at the age of 20. I've also been a biohacker or health optimizer for the last 17 years. And for those who haven't met me yet, my very first piece of furniture was an infrared sauna. So I actually spent my days on longevity investments and building longevity clinics. Out of that, I have founded a global association of longevity clinic builders, and the idea is to build the blueprint of what we think a longevity clinic should look like and should do. In addition to that, I speak to a lot of family offices and venture capitalists, so basically senior allocators on the private side, explaining to them what on earth longevity actually is, why we should invest in that, and how we actually go about that. So today I have a very eclectic panel with me. I think my microphone keeps dropping out, but that's okay. And actually something I'm very happy to see is that 3 out of my 4 panelists actually come from a family office background themselves. So I think that should give you a good idea of that, the fact of the space actually being a very investable space. So we'll start with the first one. David, where's David? Hello.
Hi there.
So David Cubbin works in the family office of Björn von Siemens, which is a very familiar name, especially to the German speakers in the room. And the family office has invested in 40 health tech businesses already, and you've actually built your own operational businesses. So David, tell us, actually before we go into that, there's a bit of an anecdote. So one of the founding fathers of the evidence-based medicine movement about 30 years ago said, look, if you're med school and 50% of the knowledge that you were taught in med school will be either outdated or plain wrong or dead wrong, literally, within 5 years of your graduation, the problem is we don't know which 50%. And actually, I think these days we're very lucky in the sense that on one hand, new capabilities around collection and use of data, as well as diagnostic tools, and on the other hand, shifting consumer attitudes have actually, led us to a new type of medicine, and that is called 4P medicine, or longevity and preventive medicine. So the 4Ps stand for prediction, prevention, personalization, and participation or patient centrism. So David, with that in mind, how does the family office think about longevity and investing into it as an asset class?
Thank you very much, Judith, and it's a pleasure to be here today with such an esteemed panel. So as a family office, we invest quite a lot in healthcare, health tech. I think these 4 Ps are really important for longevity, and one of the P's that we really focus on is the diagnostics angle. There's obviously a branch of longevity which is all about sort of finding the panacea, the pill that's going to prevent your cells from, switching off and all of that sort of exciting stuff, which is great. It's not our specialty. We're probably at the perhaps less cutting edge side of things. But we believe that the healthcare system just needs to transform anyway from being all about sick care and waiting till everyone gets sick to healthcare. And funnily enough, we already have all the ingredients to do that. There's a lot of great technology out there. There's a lot of, there's a lot of goodwill, and yet the system is somehow sort of broken. So I want to just touch on two things incredibly quickly. One is a point solution, so a diagnostics technology that we find interesting in the space, and the other is the platform approach. Firstly, tech solution, breast cancer, it's the most common cancer in women, affects different demographic groups more than others, tends to be more aggressive in younger women. A few of the issues that women face are, that it's a mammogram is very uncomfortable, there's radiation involved, and there's the uncertainty involved of waiting for your results, right? We've all had that before. You wait around, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. It's terrifying, right? So enter a company called Bexa that we really like, based in the States. And this is a company that deploys sort of high-res elastography to provide pictures of abnormal breast tissues and masses. And what that technology is it's not uncomfortable, there's no radiation involved, and you get your results immediately. And that's just one example of a tech solution that can completely change the game. And like mammograms can already detect cancers, but there are other reasons why, behavioural reasons why it's still a killer. And for developing markets as well, something like this tech can be incredibly useful. But there's, as I mentioned, there's already all these great technologies, but as a consumer, everything is still so fragmented. How do we know how to live our best lives, and how do I know what I'm at risk of catching, and how do I know what the best diagnostics tool is for what disease? And I think we are, as a family, we're really interested in investing in platforms that bring all this stuff together. And an example of this is a company called Das Lab in Germany, which is a digital diagnostics business that has these fantastic relationships with the insurance companies, but it's plugging in all these new tech solutions, so that, going back to the 4 Ps, it's a far more interactive journey for the patient. People are engaged, so participation rates are higher. The engagement is more personalised, and that ultimately leads to better outcomes, and it affects longevity at the end of the day. Thank you.
Super. So moving from laboratory to longevity clinics, actually, we've got Kate Woolhouse with us today, who's the CEO of Hooke. And actually, by way of background, we've got about 170 plus longevity clinics globally, either already in operation or about to launch. Yours has already been going for quite a while. So tell us about the learnings of the last 4 years.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. So Hooke has been in operation now for 4 years. And I think where we have found we are having the greatest impact is in putting those last 2 Ps into operation. So the personalization and the participation. It's wonderful being able to employ that top level of diagnostics and put into practice the latest science for the benefit of our clients. But where we find we get the best outcomes is in helping them institute behavioral change and identifying their own personal preferences and goals, For example, we catch a lot of very early stage cancers with the in-depth testing that we do. But if you find 4 people with the same problem, you're not going to solve it with the same solution with all 4 of them. First of all, there's all of the amazing cutting-edge science that goes into identifying precisely the types of cancers, the best possible treatment, etc. But then for different people, you also have to look at the options in intervention and whether they want to wait and see, whether they want to employ lifestyle methods, whether they want to aggressively treat it, whether they want to go into some kind of trial. This is where clinics are really at the forefront of making sure that all of these tools are being taken into account and utilized and adapted for the clientele that's at hand. So I think where the clinics are doing really valuable work is the real world experience we get from how these tools are utilized and how they're experienced by the market.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kate. So Phil Newman is our next panelist. He is the CEO and founder of Longevity.Technology, which is the largest publication in the space. So he's got all the good gossip, basically. Phil, longevity extends beyond clinical care. You have what you call the 10 levels of longevity strategy. Can you explain the thesis and share with us the most exciting non-clinical breakthroughs happening?
Sure. Yeah, I guess we have a unique view, a daily view on what's happening in the industry, which is very exciting. We analyze the industry from an investment perspective. So 2021 was a breakout year. There was 10 billion invested in terms of dollars. Last year was 3.9, but this year is back up to 4.7 billion. So obviously we've all experienced a bit of a dip in the finance markets, but likewise longevity is really taking hold now as a theme with investors, which is great. It is a challenging space though. I mean, we've talked about 4 Ps. When you speak to investors, they need to understand what they're investing in and what the risk and reward is associated with those investments. So we've identified these 10 levels of longevity, and in fact, because we're here today, I published an article on our website so that people can take a look at it. If you just go to Longevity.Technology, it's the first article on the homepage. So you've got levels 1, 2, and 3, which are the basics of good lifestyle, diagnostics, supplements, which obviously are very prevalent. Level 4 is the work that Kate does, which is the clinics, and this is such an important bridge into this industry. I mean, honestly, I was telling Kate in the foyer, I've been to 2 longevity clinics, and I was asymptomatic on 2 conditions. One of them was quite a serious one. So they do a great work now in bridging these sciences into the next phase. And we talked about the sick care level, which is level 5, right? So this is all these companies that are working on aging diseases right now. They are very exciting. The ones in the biotech space that are longevity specific, they're working on aging drivers that are now predicting the next phases of growth in the sector. So as we move into the more exciting and higher risk but higher reward categories, you've got prevention. So you've got preventative therapies. Now we've all seen what's happened with the weight loss drugs, right? So we called GLP-1s a longevity therapy 18 months ago now, and that's really starting to pick up as a theme because it's cardioprotective, neuroprotective, and obviously it's diabetes, gets ahead of diabetes. So you go from these aging pathways into the next phases, which is to say, actually, if we understand how these diseases actually manifest themselves in the body, can we rewind them? So that's where the exciting stuff happens, where you're now moving into rejuvenation at a cellular level. So there are companies now working on that. We analyze their clinical stages. So the exciting thing is that there are new companies coming through the pipeline. And then the future, of course, is then systemic rejuvenation, where you work through every cell in the body. And there are companies working on that. And then the last 2 levels, which are 9 and 10, are organ preservation and organ replacement and cryopreservation, which, frankly, they're the 2 that you don't really want because they're actually where the longevity science hasn't worked. But it's a very exciting space. There's a lot of capital coming in. It needs more capital, but you can see the rewards are happening now. BioAge Labs is one of the biotechs that's just come through, just IPO'd, oversubscribed IPO, and they're a great example of a company that's now going to be working with Big Pharma to bring their tech into an aging prevention therapy.
Exactly. So basically, plan A is live healthily, do all the lifestyle interventions. Plan B is you've got all the biotech happening, and plan C is just get frozen, basically, if you die.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So we've got the backup sorted. So I'm going to make you understand now why I made you get up and do the really awkward thing, especially for Germans and Brits, of smiling at your neighbor, which is just something that is not done. May I introduce you to Alyx van der Worm, who is a neuroscientist, top of her class at Harvard and Oxford. And you were on your way to becoming a neurosurgeon, and instead you started your app Clyx, which is a mental health, basically the largest mental health app for Gen Z. Would you like to tell us why?
100%. So I watched far too much Grey's Anatomy growing up as a kid, so I was confident from 10 onwards that I was going to be a surgeon. Arrived at Harvard, took my neuro classes, joined a lab, and then I started seeing a lot of the research around the impact of mental health on your physical health. And I grew up with a Dutch family who kind of thought mental health was a stuffy topic, you know, grin and bear it. But while I was in this lab, I saw that actually the quality of your close relationships is a bigger predictor for your lifespan than wealth, fame, or career success. And most people spend most of their life chasing one of those three things. And David actually mentioned that there's no magic answer to health, but I actually have always adopted quite a contradictory opinion, which is I think we do have a magic answer, and it's staring right at us, and it's community. Community is the ultimate biohack. If we look at blue zones, where people live to be over 100, we see that the core tenet is them spending time with other people. At the same time, in countries like the US, people are spending 24 hours more a month in isolation. So that's 6 hours less a week socializing. To the extent that the US Surgeon General even declared a loneliness epidemic, citing research that loneliness is as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So I essentially think that social media has caused an environment where we have a silent killer, and that's people being lonely, people spending time alone. Loneliness is the biggest driver of anxiety and depression, and we see the economic impact that has. If you look at insurance companies, they spend almost $300 billion a year in the US alone on mental health related treatments. So when I was at college, I thought, what better way to solve this than technology, which can obviously have a huge reach. So rather than be a surgeon, I built Clyx, where we essentially find all the activities happening in your city, you know, yoga classes, galleries, and we match you with your friends or people you get on with who want to go to that. Because the hardest part of going to anything is making the plan. You know, Friday rolls around, we don't know what our friends are doing, maybe we're new in a city, we can't be bothered to organize. But we essentially use AI to give you your plans for you. We have about 100,000 users now, which is exciting. We got approached by Harvard to launch on their campus because they are working also with the US Surgeon General to combat loneliness. But essentially, I'm a believer that if you really want to benefit your health and your longevity, the best way is to invest in relationships and invest in time spent with people. And I think financially, we're going to see a lot of products emerge from this understanding that mental health is a very valuable area to invest in.
And actually, speaking of investment from a purely investor point of view, which is also part of why we're here today, I mean, you've already had acquisition offers from Snapchat and Match Group, to my knowledge. So I think there's a fundamental misconception about longevity in that people think it's biotech and you need to spend $2 billion and 20 years to make anything happen. Now, hopefully today's panel has given you an idea that that is decidedly not the case. The investment returns, both to humanity as well as to you as investors, are actually a lot closer than we think they are. The other fundamental misconception is people think it's for the likes of Brian Johnsons in the world. Again, that is not the case. This affects every single human being on the planet, from cradle to grave, and actually even before the cradle. And finally, look, dear allocators, I think one thing to bear in mind, you've seen that this is a very diverse panel on a very disparate, diverse topic, and when you make these allocation decisions, you really need to get the experts into the room. So thank you very much.